On this episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we have Max Busch joining the show, master club fitter, to talk about some of the best products out there for golfers with steep attack angles. If you take big divots with your irons and wedges, this might be an episode that you really want to tune into. Plus, we're going to look at some new releases out there into the golf market, some really awesome new products out there, and then kind of another fascinating win on the PGA Tour as well. So a lot packed into this episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Hey golfers, I'm Drew Mahol of Second Swing Golf, joined by Sean Bauer for another episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Another week, another eventful, week full of happenings in the golf space for us. Going to have a sweet discussion with Max just on steep attack angles. And, one of the things that we kind of did the swing speed thing with Jake, and one of the things that a lot of the commenters pointed out was that we didn't necessarily outline or describe exactly what the parameter, so to speak, would be for a slow swing speed. So I made sure to get Max's take on what makes a steep attack angle. And then from there, we talked about some of the various clubs in different categories. So that was a lot of fun. But then, we've got a lot of tour stuff, and then some qualifiers that were successful for some Second Swing ambassadors as well.
It was a busy week in the golf world. As we'll get to here, it kind of feels like launch season all over again.
It does.
This week. And then, with Max, this is going to be a two-part. We'll have the steep swings this episode, and then probably next week or so, we'll get into some shallow attack angles. So kind of fits, multiple golfers. So really good stuff from Max as he makes his podcast debut. And then, we had another great finish on the PGA Tour. We have some awesome qualifiers, and we'll get talking about some of these new clubs. So we'll get right into the turn, and we're going to start with the John Deere Classic. Brian Campbell, now a two-time PGA Tour winner. Both wins coming this year. Both wins coming via a playoff as he two-putt par there on 18 at the John Deere in the playoff to outlast Emiliano Grillo. Grillo.
Either one works. People get the idea.
My apologies, but so crazy. Really good win for him. He almost had it. He almost had an eagle on the 17th there.
Yeah,
hitting a phenomenal wood into that par 5. Just missed the eagle putt. Ends up getting birdie. Was the playoff. If he makes that eagle putt, he probably just wins it outright. But crazy. The shortest player on tour has won twice this year.
It is fascinating how if you look around the landscape of maybe golf media, there's a pretty big section of it that is kind of making the claim over and over that the ball's going too far and these courses are becoming obsolete. And I think there's a little bit of truth to that in some respects. But then now you see the shortest guy on tour win twice this year. And it's funny that this is 1 week after the fastest guy on tour won at the Rocket Classic.
The guy who he beat in the playoff for his first win.
So it's just
full circle here.
It's it is credit to him. I mean, there's so many things that he has had to and continues to overcome to be successful. Obviously he was without his tour card for so long and grinded to get it back this year. And then again, being the shortest hitter on tour typically gives you a pretty big disadvantage, but obviously he's got the game elsewhere to make up for it. And so kudos to him. It was a fun tournament, and we had for a while there was 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that had a chance there on Sunday. So that's always a really fun tournament to watch unfold. And speaking of eagles on 17, you had Lipsky there make the eagle on 17 to tie the lead, and then just absolutely duck hooked his tee shot on 18, and then was forced to try and save par. Didn't quite save it, but
that par putt from the angle they showed at,
it looked
blown
like it was
away
drop.
That thing didn't drop. It it looked like it was breaking right, and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
And felt bad for him because that'd have been interesting if he won, because he would have been, he's a lab putter. He plays the Oz there,
right?
So it would have been big there. But and then Brian Campbell, it's 2 wins, his only 2 top 25s of the year. So
big game hunter. I mean, he goes out there when he's in contention. He knows how to win clearly. So what a fun bag he's got here too.
Yeah, he's got he is a ping staffer, and he's pretty much ping through and through. Playing the G440 LST. Now he plays a 10.5 degree head, and he actually dials it down to 9.4. Tipped an inch D4 swing weight. So nice setup there, going with that low spin option. Now here's where there's, he's got a fairway wood combo. He plays a Ping G440 LST, but he had been playing a G430 LST. 3 wood, playing that down at 13.5 degrees, so another T club option for him there. And then he goes with a 7 wood, playing that down almost like a 6 wood if you went strictly by loft, playing that at 19.5 degrees. But here is where first PGA Tour win for this club.
Yeah.
The Ping IDI, which just launched officially yesterday on Tuesday. Playing the driving iron. He's playing as a 4 iron, which we'll talk about it more here, but that's the one that does play more like a utility iron than a driving iron.
And it makes sense. It's a great combo club there, and having, I've hit the IDI quite a bit. They built it specifically so that I guess the 2 is not that you can't hit it off the turf, but the 2 iron is primarily a driving iron club. For most cases, that club's going to be used off the tee 90+% of the time, whereas a 4 iron is a lot more, usable off the fairway or even off in the rough. And so the shape and the sole design are designed a little bit different there. So not surprising to see him have success with it right away.
Yeah, then he continues with his Ping Blueprint S's. Goes a Vokey SM10 and a Vokey Wedge Works for his wedges, and then a Ping Redwood Answer 2 putter there. So really cool bag.
Yeah, I think what's unique too is you don't see a lot of stiff flex shafts win anymore. Obviously, we've talked about his distance and swing speed. I want to say the last one I remember was Brian Harmon, of guys that come to mind as someone that's playing a stiff flex shaft. I know his woods are extra stiff, but the irons are KBS Tour 120S, and so that is, to me, that's noteworthy. You don't see a lot of that anymore. But again, kudos to Brian Campbell. That was, for a while there, it looked like he had that double on the back 9. He thought he might slip away from him, but he stepped up and hit the shots he needed to in the last couple holes there. Also, this week in golf, we had a qualifier that was pretty it had a pretty good result for a couple ambassadors of second swing. Bella and Reese McCauley both went through the U.S. Women's Amateur Qualifier. There was one yesterday at Indian Hills here near the Twin Cities. It was pretty, closely contested, if you will.
Yes.
There's 2 that advanced to the national championship there. Bella, by the looks of the leaderboard, survived a playoff at even par to get the second spot. She beat out her sister, Reese, for that spot. So Reese is an alternate, and Bella is in the U.S. Women's Amateur. But that's pretty cool, and as we, I'm curious to hear the dynamic of how that went with both of them in the playoff. We've talked a lot about the competitiveness between them before, but I wonder on a high-stakes situation like that, how that was all played out for them.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting to hear. But either way, super impressive, even par out there. When you factor in the stakes and the pressure of what you're trying to accomplish, really impressive. And Bella is getting to play quite the courses this year. Augusta National, now Bandon Dunes, where the U.S. Women's Amateur will be held. So pretty cool.
Yeah, that's if I were to have a bucket list of courses I'd like to play, Bella's going to have a couple of those checked off here in 2025. That's really cool. And so that's, we've got some content we're going to film with both of them here soon. And that is one thing we'll try to touch on is how the qualifier happened, how it all played out. I did see Bella birdied her last hole, or at least hole 18 on the scorecard. So if she needed to birdie that and how that all works. And then, of course, the dynamic of the playoff, because it was not just the 2 of them. There was, I think, maybe 4 or 5 gals that were even par. And so there was only one that was going to get that second spot. And, Bella somehow prevailed there. So fascinating stuff and really good for them.
Yeah, Bella with the birdie on the 18th hole to get into that playoff. Reese with the 33 on the back 9 to get into the playoff and become an alternate. So really good stuff. And, congratulations to both of them. But let's get into some new products. It's a little mini launch week. It's about halfway through the year, so it's not unheard of that you see some products come out kind of this time of the year, as more players have been playing. We're going to start off with, so far probably the biggest launch of the week, the Ping I-240 irons.
Yeah.
That I series for Ping, you had I-210 that Victor Hovland still plays. You had the I-230s, which is one of the best irons in our fitting bays for that specific category. And now you got the Ping I-240. Drew, I know you and Jake tested them out recently, so what were just kind of your impressions of them?
Yeah, I think, it's one of those categories that Ping has just absolutely nailed with, I-210, I-230, and now this one, the I-240. There is a back badge that changes the look of it maybe a little bit, just from that perspective. But again, when you're looking down at the dress, it looks just exactly like the previous models and performs that way. There's a little bit more spin, which I think is a good thing for players in this category that, maybe they don't generate enough spin. Maybe they are shallow, which we can kind of get to that discussion a little bit with Max in a future episode, where players need a little bit of spin, a little bit of launch. This iron is going to be really good for players that still want kind of a compact look, maybe some control of it, right? It's pretty solid at first glance, and I think they've also, with the way it looks at a dress, it can combo nicely with the other irons in the Ping lineup, Blueprint, etc.
Yeah, well, as someone who plays Ping I-230s, I'm very interested to go test these out just to see how they compare.
Yeah, it could be a future video on the YouTube channel too.
Yeah, I've had some I-230s now for a year, and I didn't play enough with them last year. I've played a little bit more this year, and I just absolutely love them. As someone who's, I'm a decent golfer, I don't need, the blade or the even like the, cavity backs there, like the Blueprint S. So this kind of fits that, it's still a player's iron, touch more forgiveness to it.
I think this it's a fascinating iron because it fits such a wide realm of golfers where you have, I was on the truck, the Ping Tour truck, and I saw a set that had been built for Victor Hovland. I don't know if he's for sure playing them currently or not. I know he was kind of stuck in this I-210 set for a long time, but nonetheless, it's an iron that can be built for the best players in the world, but also it totally plays for anybody that needs a little bit of spin, forgiveness, and wants some control over it. And that's a wide net of golfers out there. That includes you. That includes Tyrrell Hatton and Victor Hovland. It includes a huge group of players that I think Ping's done a really good job with.
Yeah. So that was one of two Ping launches. The other one, of course, we have mentioned it earlier in the show, the Ping IDI driving/utility iron.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really, really good club for Ping. I know from the fitter's perspective, they might not like that it's not adjustable versus the I crossover had the adjustable hosel. So that part probably the fitters won't love, but I think the performance of this thing is awesome. I think it's a little bit more helpful on mishits, a little bit hotter, I feel like, especially when it comes to the mishits. Like, it's one thing to keep the ball straighter, which it does, but I think that also the speed retention is really good. And I'm going to probably throw the 3-iron in my bag. I feel pretty good about that. I've hit it a lot. I've been testing it.
You play an I crossover, right?
Yeah. So I've been playing an I crossover, and I do like the look of the I crossover a little better, the black, and it's a little sleeker. But I just think the performance of the IDI is that much better. So I'm really excited about that one.
Yeah. And then last Callaway had their TI Fusion irons launched today. But on Monday, they, for the first time in 8 years, they brought back the X Forged lineup to the United States. It had been something over in Japan, in the Japanese market, but they brought back their first one-piece forged iron. These look incredible. They look really sleek. I
think it's been a while since Callaway made a true big splash with a fully forged, like one-piece forging iron, and I think this is them kind of jumping both feet in back into this sort of category of golf club. And I really am especially intrigued by the X Forged Max because it's a little bit bigger, but it's still that one-piece forging. So there's a little bit of forgiveness there, yet it still has that really soft feel that I think will be really appealing to a ton of golfers that maybe can't quite put something as small and compact and thin as the X Forged, but still want kind of that feel of a one-piece forging. So I think they've knocked this out of the park. If you're a Callaway player, you've loved Callaway irons over the years, you'll want to give these a try.
Yeah, I think what I was most impressed with when I was watching the swing report that you were testing them, and especially with the X Forged Max, you weren't striking it as well as
Correct.
you probably hoped, but you were still seeing the same distances,
Yes.
which, goes to speak. I mean, that's what forgiveness is, right? You want to be hitting everything same ball
Right.
speeds. You're not losing a bunch of distance just because you miss it a little toey or you miss it a little high or a little low, so.
Which the one-piece forgings typically don't do that as well.
Yeah.
That's where when you get the hollow body irons or the cast ones that are a little chunkier, they're designed to help with those misses. But to see that out of the forging like that is really, really good.
Yeah, so golfers, Ping I-240, Ping IDI, Callaway X Forged, X Forged Max, all these new clubs that are coming out this week. If you're interested, make sure you schedule a fitting. Let our fitters, dial in them to your specs, to your swing. Lots of great options. Best way to do it, obviously, just go in, test them head-to-head to a bunch of different stuff and find the right fit for you.
Yeah, well, now we can get into our main topic today. So we had Max Busch, as Sean mentioned, making the debut, so to speak, on the podcast. But he's a ton of fun to talk to. Great to get his insights. And this is, again, the steep attack angles. You'll especially want to listen up if you are a player that takes those big divots with irons and wedges. This will really appeal to you. Great discussion here with Max. Okay, now joining the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we have a new special guest, Max Busch. For those who have seen our social media or follow us on our social media, you know who Max is. But Max, I'll let you introduce yourself for those who maybe don't follow us on social, which, by the way, you should. What are you doing for Second Swing, and where are you working?
Yeah, thanks, Drew. So Max Busch, like Drew mentioned, I'm working over at our Minneapolis store. I'm one of the master club fitters there. I've been fitting now for, going on 3 years.
Oh, wow.
The first year of fitting really gained me a lot of experience.
Sure.
And I've really enjoyed kind of doing what I'm doing and jumping onto the content side of things. It's been fun. Obviously love the game of golf. So it's, just been nice to be around that game and help people get into it and better equipment, whatever that might be.
It's almost, that's almost a prerequisite for anyone to join Second Swing alone, let alone be a fitter working with golfers every day. Right. So, and I know, that's a big part of what we do too, is on the, what we call Second Swing University side, but as building out the content for training materials for our fitters. And so I know you're helping quite a bit with that as well. So today we wanted to talk about the different swing types in the Bay and kind of the best clubs that you've seen this year. Last time we did this, we did it with Jake Montgomery. We talked about swing speeds, so fast or maybe moderate swing speeds and some of the products that stand out there. So today we wanted to go on more so the attack angle, because that's another way that maybe some products or some clubs will stand out.
Definitely.
We'll start with kind of a steep attack angle, and I wanted to first just get your thoughts on like what would be considered in terms of whether it's a driver or whether it's irons, like a steep attack angle. Like how far down on the ball would you be like, okay, this person's hitting steep on it?
Yeah. I mean, driver, anything, down 2 or more, I would say is pretty steep for a driver.
Yeah.
Obviously, want to be hitting up on that if possible, take the spin off. Irons, I would say when I see maybe 5 to 6 or more consistently, I'd consider that pretty steep.
Okay.
When you get to the double digits is when it's honestly a little bit impressive that's being able to be accomplished.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if we're talking irons for if we're fitting a steep attack angle on irons, 5, 6, 7 down, loft is going to be your friend there.
Right. Yeah. So with that said, a lot of golfers probably don't have like a launch monitor to know exactly what their attack angle is. But more or less, if you feel like you're taking a pretty large divot with even like a mid iron, you're probably quote unquote you have a steep attack angle. And so, or if maybe you notice your driver ball flight is kind of that low, almost riser that seems to spin some. That's probably also as a result of a steep attack angle. So, so let's dive into what we're going to do is go kind of club by club category. And just if you have some golf clubs, some models that have stood out for a steep attack angle. So I want to start at the top of the bag with driver. If you've noticed any of the new models this year that just seem to work really well for players that swing down on the driver.
Yeah. Well, the G440 LST has been really great for me in the fitting bay. for anybody that's, down more than 2 degrees on the driver. Just kind of keeping that spin lower and then consistent, depending upon, where they're hitting on that impact location on the face, can really add even more spin if we're a little heel side. But that 440 LST has been good kind of really wherever it's hit on the face, just a little more consistent.
Sure.
Less movement, typically out to the right.
Sure.
So that, as well as TaylorMade drivers, have always historically been pretty hot off the top of the face, which if we're, attacking down at that typical strike location is usually going to be a little on that, like above the equator, if you would. So the QI35 Max has been pretty good for me as well on that driver side of things.
Interesting. Is that the TaylorMade side of it? Is that because of the carbon, or is that just something that you've noticed even before with maybe some of the older models like the M family or Sim or anything like that? Or maybe it is just as a result of the carbon material?
I think it's kind of a combination of the carbon, and then they have a slightly different, CG placement to some of the other manufacturers. So that might, play a factor into it. But I had a high-speed player in yesterday who was down a couple, and he brought in his original Sim, and he hit both of his furthest balls with that.
Okay.
Granted, we got him hitting it in a lot tighter dispersion circle, losing maybe 2 yards. But, yeah, I mean, TaylorMade drivers, for whatever reason, have been very hot off the top of the face. So.
Okay, interesting. I hadn't considered, how maybe some manufacturers have different hot spots potentially on their driver faces. But, okay, I wanted to move on to, I'm going to give you the option to throw in a mini driver as well, if there is one. Otherwise, we can go to the fairway wood category as well, if there is any model in either of those categories that's been working for a steep swinger.
100%. I'll attack the mini driver section because I actually recently just put one in the bag.
Okay, perfect.
3-wood wasn't working the best for me, and just more so needed an off the tee club. But not to hammer home the same nail, but the R7 quad has been pretty good for a little bit steeper angle of attack. Same reason. Yeah, it's just if you hit it a little high on the face, it's just fine. Hasn't been spinning too high. Granted, a mini driver typically we want a little bit more spin, that aspect of control. But, putting a couple weights, their heavier 13-gram weights forward really has helped anybody who's, down a couple or more with the mini driver, just keeping it in play, right? That's the whole goal of the mini driver. Yeah,
that's really cool that the R7 has, the whole key technology of like the R7 quad from how long ago was 4 weight ports.
Yes.
And they kept it in this mini driver and kind of modernized it, made it sleek for 2025, and it's working really well. I remember Jake telling the story about how he had someone that was swinging their driver, 130, 140 miles an hour, and he actually took 4 13-gram weights and put them in that to make it super heavy, 7-wood shaft. And that was what fit this player as with the crazy speed that they had.
No kidding.
But the versatility that even offers you to even make that as an option is super nice, I'm sure, for you guys as fitters. In addition to adjustable hosel and all the different lofts you can use with the R7 too, where for players that might need a little bit of loft.
Exactly right. I mean, for me, the more weight you can adjust and move, the easier it makes to kind of fit that club to somebody, right? You can put a heavy one in the toe, keep both 13s out on the toe if they, slamming that face shut, whatever it might be. So just adds more versatility, makes it easier for more people to fit into that, if you would.
Moving into fairway wood, is there any particular fairway wood model that jumps out at you as far as steep attack angles go?
Yeah, the steep and higher speed, both the 440 LST fairway wood as well as the Elite titanium have both been real nice for steeper attack angles. I imagine it's kind of just that weight pushed forward, kind of dropping some of that spin, making it a little more penetrating. Those have worked really well for the higher speed players. For lower speed players or more, normal, moderate swing speed players, the GT2 has been really solid for me. Not necessarily that we're not fitting as many Titleist fairway woods, but sometimes they might get overlooked by people just because of
there's so many
options out there, right? So, Titleist is huge on their drivers and the ball speed they get off those, but kind of the consistency of spin with a more moderate swing speed player. And then just like the ease of launch with the GT2 has been fantastic. Like just getting, up to 75, 80, 90 feet of height with a fairway wood for somebody in regular flex is like awesome.
Right. I think it's probably tough for you guys too, especially, maybe it's a moderate swing speed player, but also someone that has at the same time a steep attack angle. I bet the fairway wood conversation is a bit of a tricky one because it's a player that swings down on it, but also probably doesn't have a ton of speed to get the ball in the air. So they're already kind of putting themselves at a huge disadvantage for, they're probably not a 3-wood player straight up. They probably don't play a 3-wood. They might start with a 5-wood or even a 7-wood as like their only fairway wood to make sure they can get it off the ground and get the appropriate launch and spin in that category there.
Yeah.
And that's where GT2 can maybe be handy.
Yes. And I will say it seems, I know Ping added their 4-wood.
Yeah.
The 4-wood, 7-wood combo for steeper swing players has been awesome for me, whether it's Titleist or...
Yeah, there's other manufacturers.
Yeah.
I know, like G440, they added a 4-wood specifically as part of like their suite of models or offerings.
Exactly right.
But yeah, I think we're noticing, not that the 3-wood's going away, but I think traditionally just assuming players have a 15-degree 3-wood in the bag, that's starting to go down a little bit with mini drivers and 4-woods and what have you out there. So,
exactly.
Okay, moving on from fairway woods, we'll kind of put hybrids and utility irons sort of into one category here. If there's a model in either of those that's been working for the steeper swingers out there.
If we're going utility irons, the Strixon, the ZXI utility, they incorporated that like VT sole to it, and it's just tough to beat the turf interaction that gets. It just helps, to deter a little bit of that chunking that can happen with a steep attack angle. And then if you swing steep, you're going to add spin, especially to a hybrid or a long iron. With their forward center of gravity, it's just nice penetrating ball flight, lower spin. If you need the spin for the stopping power, it's there too. So that's been really good for the steeper guys with the utility irons, typically, a higher speed player as well. And then just kind of going back to that G440 and the hybrid side of things, the spin consistency is a real thing, and it works really well, especially for, if we're down maybe those baseball swingers.
Right.
It's just been working super well, able to kind of cut some of that side spin off almost, and then, just make it a little bit more consistent ball flight.
Yeah, I think on the G440s, I think you don't think a lot of tour players playing multiple hybrids in the bag.
Right.
I think you think of, there's obviously guys that might play a 7-wood. There's a few that are playing 9-woods, but like it seems like 4 or 5 hybrids are really rare on tour. But I think of Joaquin Niemann as a steep swinger. He gets really down into the golf ball, and I believe as of a couple months ago, for sure, if not even currently, he was playing a 5 hybrid.
Yeah, he was
in the G440, and so that to me indicates what you're telling me about how it can be really helpful for that low, that steep attack angle, maybe a low launcher that still wants to get enough height and spin, stop the ball on the green. So it seems like Niemann agrees with your assessment there.
Exactly right.
With the G440.
Yeah, I mean, back at the Masters where Freddie Couples, didn't he hole out with a 5 hybrid? Might have been the G430, but still. I mean, he's one of the smoothest swings ever, but I would imagine he gets down a couple on his hybrids as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, we got to, he makes a joke that like he's adding a head cover every year. But I think it is something to take note of for, the amateur golfers listening that like there's no shame, I guess, in having 5-6 head covers in your bag, because if it helps you, perform and hit the right shots, like that's what you need.
Yeah, play the game however you want to play it to enjoy it. It's the bottom line there,
So when it comes to irons, now obviously with all the different categories of irons there are now, I'll kind of let you take this how you want to, because there's you got players, there's players distance, or something between players and players distance now, and then we have our kind of game improvement category. So if there's any direction you want to go here, but for irons that have seemed to really work for you with players that are steep down at the ball, like you said, in that kind of maybe -5, -6 range of attack angle for a 7-iron.
Sure. I'm going back to Strixon. The VT sole is fantastic. I've finally gotten a bunch of my college buddies to realize that they just need to get fit for golf clubs. So one of my buddies is he was a hockey and baseball player, 4 years varsity. Swings real hard, and swings really hard down at the ground. And he was just convinced like he'd never be able to find an iron that would kind of get high enough for him, just because his dynamic loft is like 17 degrees on a 7-iron. So we had to do a little loft manipulating, but once we got the ZXi4 in his hand, it was like a night and day difference. Just take a couple degrees of loft off of it, and then it was perfect launch, perfect spin. And once he took him outside, the turf interaction, I mean, not that he might even know what that is, but he said it felt fantastic.
Yeah.
So like, if you have any sort of leading edge relief on an iron, it's typically going to be a little better for somebody that is a little steeper on the ball. I know one of the more players distance irons will go away from Strixon here. In the 925 Forged, they added a little bit of a leading edge relief. Found that one to be pretty good for like the player's distance category if maybe the ZXi5 isn't working for that individual. But yeah, anything with just a little relief on that leading edge has worked really well, and rightfully so.
Yeah, it seems like what you're seeing from a lot of different manufacturers, obviously Strixon has their sole design that's been really successful for a few generations now. But you're seeing with Mizuno, a couple others where they are adjusting the sole to give a little more relief on both sides. There's almost like 3 sections to the soles of a lot of these new irons now. And I think there's maybe a trend towards identifying, okay, this relief seems to help golfers a lot more clean, with a clean turf interaction, delivering the club into the ball through the ground and up without a hindrance or without, the chance of digging necessarily there.
Exactly.
It seems like that's been something I've noticed with some new designs this year. It seems to be working there. One thing since we're talking about steep attack angles, I do want to just kind of wrap, this, I guess, portion of it just by talking about wedges and specifically a little bit on the bounce side of things and why these types of players, since they're listening and they've got their ears perked right now, why bounce and grind are so important. Not if there's a model or a grind out there that you particularly want to highlight, you can go for it, but basically why a certain bounce is preferable for these players.
Yeah, and I mean, the wider the sole with a steep attack angle, typically the easier it is going to be to consistently strike it at least. With, I guess, myself as a decent example for wedges, I'm down 6 or 7 on my wedges. I like to hit a more penetrating ball flight.
Sure.
The 12D grind in the Vokey has been my absolute best friend in both the 60 degree and the 54 degree.
Okay.
I just feel like I don't ever have to worry about catching the leading edge in the turf. I can swing down comfortably and just repeat it. I've been kind of passing this off to some of my friends as well, and just a wider soled wedge has been working a lot better for most everybody who's, down a couple or more. It's tough for us to test in the fitting bay just because we're on artificial turf, but anytime I see down, 6, 7 with wedges, it's going to be 10 or more most definitely, but typically 12 or more in the full swing wedges, like 50, 52, 54, 56.
Right.
So, but yeah, just deterring that, leading edge from going through the turf is going to make just more consistent wedge shots closer to the pin and make more birdies.
Absolutely. That's the name of the game, right? Making some birdies.
Exactly right.
Lowering those scores. So for the steep swingers, we kind of just went through each of the main club categories there, and you got the insight from Mr. Max Busch. And that was Max Busch talking the steep attack angle players and specifically what's worked. And I think there's with that, it always comes down to spin as well. Like in most cases, a steep attack angle typically means more spin. And so it's kind of a discussion on spin is what it really came down to for the most part. But nonetheless, good to get his insights on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, spin is the name of the game when it comes to steep attack angles. It's something that I play with. So this was definitely... my ears were perked when I was listening to, this interview. And obviously, like all these are all just one specific category of a golf swing. I think what you're going to realize, whether it's speed, attack angle, I think we might do swing path here, low spin, high spin players. different types of things, is that's why getting fit is so important, because all of these factors play into each other. So just because you're a steep swinger, if you're slower swing speed or faster swing speed, you could have two entirely different options.
Right.
These are just typical trends that we've been seeing, that Max has been seeing. So really, really good stuff. And we'll have him back on talking about shallow swing paths here. Yeah. So you want to stay tuned for that, because he does have obviously different swing type, different results. So stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, and then in terms of stuff, what's to come as far as both on the podcast, but also on the YouTube channel. I would tune in, tomorrow, Thursday this week. There's going to be some awesome new stuff there. I don't know what I'm entirely able to indulge right now, but some really awesome new products are going to be on the YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. That was a lot of fun for those. And then moving forward, again, I mentioned we're filming with Bella and Reese McCauley this week. We're also going to film with Kate Smith-Stroh. She's actually stopping by. She's from Minnesota originally. She's stopping by up here in the Twin Cities, and we're going to do some fun stuff with her. She's going to get fit for a putter, so that'll be a lot of fun to film that and see how one of the best golfers in the world gets fit on Quintech with a putter, or for a putter there. And then also I wanted to give a call out to the viewers and listeners still tuning in. We have Kevin visiting next week.
Yeah.
And so if you have any specific ideas you want content-wise, any YouTube videos you want us to film, or tests you want us to conduct with Kevin, leave them in the comments, because we'd love to get your ideas on that as Kevin visits for a day or two, and just dedicated to filming content with him. So, a lot of exciting stuff coming.
Yeah, and when it comes to Kevin, you can, in your comments, guess what's in his bag.
Yeah, I actually haven't even checked with him in a while.
We haven't talked with him since earlier this year, so it'll be interesting to see what has changed, because obviously he is a self-proclaimed professional club tinker.
Yeah.
So
that's a very fitting title for him.
Yeah, so really, that'll be awesome. All three of those content shoots are going to be fantastic. Obviously, we'll have Kevin here on the podcast. In terms on the second swing side, it is swing days this week. Kind of happens, a few times a year. Exclusive deals on secondswing.com. Whether you're looking for Cobra Dark Speed drivers, Titleist TSI 3 drivers, a lot of really good products going at, even better deals than they already were. So make sure you take advantage of these limited time deals. Swing Days, I think, ends on Friday. So take advantage of that. And then, we got lots of product launches that have happened this week. So, if you want to get all your information, head to our YouTube channel. We have swing reports and club tests, and kind of give you the breakdown of all these, and then obviously schedule a fitting as always.
I will also kind of leave with one more thing here, and that is on Friday this week, we were back on the Ping Tour truck, and we filmed, this is back a couple months ago, and it was just the testing phase of the IDI iron. They built a couple of them for Austin Eckroat to test, and Eckroat just had a really good finish with the John Deere. Obviously, a couple-time winner on the PGA Tour, so it was cool to watch that process where he got a couple of IDIs built for him for his initial testing period. So stay tuned for that on Friday.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Well, thanks again for tuning in for another episode of Second Swing Thoughts. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Follow us along on your favorite podcast platform, as we are available there. And thanks for another great show, Drew. And we'll see you all back here next week.